Good afternoon. We are broadcasting live from the downtown Youngstown, Ohio Youngstown studios, and this is the 330 Sports Show. Today is Thursday, September 24th, 2020. My name is Justin Coffin, and we are brought to you by Youngstown Studios and produced by Joe Danier. Before I bring on our guests today, I'd like to have a word here from our sponsor, Coca's Pizza.
Attention all football fans. If you can't see your team play, come and dine with us and watch it live at Boardman, Canfield, or Cortland. Or staying at home, we'll deliver right to your door. That's Coca's Pizza. We serve it hot.
All right. My guest today, I'm going to introduce here in a minute. He is a 1984 graduate of Boardman High School. He is a graduate of Grove City College, Westminster College, and received his superintendent's licensure through Youngstown State University. He was a math teacher with the Bedford and Canfield schools. He was also an assistant principal with the Canfield schools, where he then became principal of Boardman High School. Following being the principal at Boardman High School, he took over a new role as director of operations, and for the past 4 years, he has been the lead man over at Boardman, the superintendent, so where he was formerly my boss as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to please welcome Mr. Tim Saxton. Mr. Saxton, welcome.
Hey, glad to be here.
Thanks for coming down. Did I miss anything in that bio?
Yeah, I guess I should have put my coaching experience.
Oh, absolutely.
When I was at Bedford, I actually coached football, track, and a couple years as wrestling.
Okay.
And then when I went to Canfield, I continued to coach football and track. I dropped the track piece once I became an assistant principal there, but I continued to coach football.
Okay.
So I want to say 14 years coaching football, 11 coaching track, and 2 or 3 years coaching wrestling. So
very cool. Very
part of
cool.
my fabric, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've been lucky enough to coach your daughters at Boardman.
Yeah.
So Alicia and Ashley, and Anna was injured her senior year with basketball, but
Right.
But she, getting to know her, became an awesome student athlete at Mount Union.
Yeah, I guess to me, it ties into what you said. What a blessing it was. I said I coached for 14, and when I stopped coaching when I became high school principal at Boardman, because those two, you had to make some decisions there.
Sure.
But actually, to me, I thought I was going to be a math teacher and a coach for life until I became principal. But actually, what a blessing it was, because I was able to see all three of my daughters play multiple sports: soccer, softball, and basketball. And 2 of them have gone on to the college level to play softball. If I was coaching, I probably would have missed that. So
absolutely,
it was a blessing to be able to see them play.
Absolutely. And and right now, and obviously you're married. You have a wonderful wife, Gina, who, to me, knowing her personally, probably one of the nicest people on earth that I know.
Yeah, she's definitely I'd say on the earth, she's top 5.
Oh, no doubt.
Maybe some people, I haven't run into them yet, but she is one of the honestly one of the nicest people in the world.
And tell us what Anna's up to right now.
Well, very proud dad. Obviously Anna she's a Mount Union graduate, but she got her first teaching job. So she is a math teacher. She's teaching at Keystone High School, at Keystone Local Schools. I'm sure people in the valley here aren't familiar with Keystone, but that's out in Lorain County.
Okay.
West of the airport, not too far from Oberlin College.
Okay. All right. And obviously the twins, Alicia and Ashley, what are they up to right now?
Well, hopefully they're studying right now. Alicia is a sophomore at Ball and Wallace. She plays softball for them, but she's studying to be a math teacher. And Ashley is a sophomore at Capital University, and to continue the pattern, as math has pattern, she's studying to be a math teacher. So I have 3 math teachers in the family.
And you said this will then be a third generation of math teachers.
So people always think I'm just a bad career counselor because I just advised all 3 of my children to go into the career that I had. But actually, I think it is we've all had a role model as my father. So I think my dad was a long time math teacher, school administrator, football coach, and a superintendent. So you can kind of see where how I kind of went in the same fold.
Flows in the bloodlines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, well, let's get into what we're getting into now. Obviously being in charge of a very large school district, things drastically changed. We kind of saw it coming towards the end of February, early March, but then I believe it was March 11th when I know I was watching an NBA game that night, and that's sort of when everything went down. I believe it was March 11th or 12th.
Right.
And how, as a school administrator, how did that change your life drastically?
Well, you could sense, you could just see it unfolding across our country as things were starting to get canceled and shut down. And I mean, you could just feel that it was coming. We were talking actually at the time, I believe it was actually a Thursday. I don't know the exact date. I was talking to Mr. Cardillos, who oversees instruction. Just, we knew we had to do something, and we weren't sure what the governor was going to do. It was funny, but there was an announcement that night. We said, let's wait before we do anything and see what the governor said. And I mean, that night's when the governor shut everything down.
Okay.
But we were already had a good indication that we may have had to shut things down. So we were actually planning some in-service days. And so it worked very well. And the governor, like I said, I believe that's a very smart decision. We needed to shut things down at the time. And so it was helpful to give us some state direction on where we need to go.
We always had those 2 o'clock Governor DeWine meetings ready and scheduled to see what was happening.
As an educator, your life changed a lot with governor's announcements. Still does.
And I believe it was that Friday. I think it was on March 13th. We did end up having an in-service day, and we sort of didn't know the future. We were living sort of day to day,
right?
And we were getting packets together for the kids. And I will say, especially for my coworkers, they adapted and did such a fantastic job. And I believe at all 6 of our buildings in Boardman, all the educators did a great job.
And we had to adapt quickly.
Yeah. Yes.
Just the idea or the concept of remote learning was, it was some people had looked at, but really just we're so focused on in-person learning and getting better at our own craft, and state mandates and state assessments, and just wanted to get better. So we had played around with remote learning. All of a sudden, it had our full attention.
Oh, no doubt. So with that, with the COVID-19 and then going to an online format, that changed a lot of extracurriculars. So can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, that was the coaches. It was tough for our coaches. They kept practice going because we did not know the future.
Sure.
I remember we were right at the end of basketball season, and I know the boys were making a little bit of a run.
Yep.
Had a very nice boys team, and I believe they had, if I remember correctly, had just lost a tough game. And if they had won that, I think back, boy, maybe it's never a blessing to have a loss, but that would have been even more crushing to know that they had a chance at maybe a district championship or an entry into the regionals, and then have all that taken from underneath them. So I guess bittersweet, but that rapidly ended the winter sports, and then spring sports were ramping up. But I got to give credit to our coaches. They found creative ways to keep workouts going. Because we did not have much direction at the time what the future of spring sports was going to look like. We had heard a lot of things, so they kept working with those kids. They really couldn't hold in-person practices, but our coaches were phenomenal in getting those practice plans out to kids remotely and holding them accountable from afar.
Okay. Yeah, and you hear all the time the word essential used, essential workers and things like that. So I would have argued, going back, these kids desperately need these sports, to stay busy, stay motivated. So you could say, in a way, high school sports are essential to these kids.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's, as I mentioned, I have a pretty extensive coaching background. I myself played football, ran track. I wasn't a very good basketball player, so I have no idea where my girls got their basketball talent from. I was able to play Division III college football. So just sports. I mean, it's the classroom outside. It's you can study leadership and study fortitude and grit. You can study it. Sure. But really, sports is that outside classroom lab, or inside. We have inside sports, but it's really the laboratory where it happens. You can practice it, and boy, there's so many great life lessons learned. Sports, it's just so beneficial for kids.
And just seeing Boardman does a fantastic job of communicating with the parents and getting that information out there, on whether it's through BSTN or whatever means it might be. I believe there's even an app for Boardman parents that they can get on and just find out whatever information they need to.
Yeah, just well, you were always when my daughters are playing sports. You were excellent at keeping people informed. I always appreciate that, both as a school leader, but as a parent. And if I remember correctly, you used the Remind app.
Yes.
And we were playing around with a lot of different communication tools to figure out what's best. And we had adopted a couple items, but really we found our teachers actually chose. With so many staff members were using Remind, and so many messages going out. We actually adopt Remind officially as a school-sponsored app with the school version right when COVID hit. And we were never able to launch it correctly because we switched to remote. And so we're in the process of doing that now. The Remind app is great. We're able to communicate with every parent, every student, and that's been so beneficial to us. And that's really a new feature for this year.
Okay. All right. Very good. So, getting into this school year, I know Boardman generally starts towards the end of August, but you guys had decided to push the date back to mid-September, so 2 weeks. What was the thinking behind that?
That's a great question. And that was not an easy decision. I'm sure there are many kids that kind of cheered because they had 2 weeks of extended summer,
Sure.
and on the opposite end, there were many parents who maybe jeered.
Yeah, right.
Because 2 more weeks. I get that, but things were where we were waiting for some direction at the time from the state.
Okay.
We did not have there wasn't an official announcement of what schools would look like. We were waiting, and that really didn't happen until late July. So all the planning we could have done in mid-June and early July, I called were tabletop exercises.
Okay.
They're practice. We didn't know which plan we would have to implement until we heard officially from the governor. And so we were kind of in this holding pattern. So once we heard what the governor did, we went to full go. A couple things that were a concern was, one was just ordering products. We felt plexiglass was going to be crucial. We made a decision to go in person because the governor allowed that. We felt that was so crucial. But we knew that there were a lot of districts that start earlier than Boardman, and there are a lot of districts across the nation that start earlier than Boardman. So they had an early ordering process, and we knew they could had a lead on us for the plexiglass. So we were concerned we would not have materials in on time. That was very important. We had to have things in place.
Okay.
Second thing was we were doing in person and a remote option, and that we'd never done. We'd done in person, we'd done remote. Yeah. And now we were going to do both. And we wanted to make sure our teachers were completely prepared, and we knew we needed time. And so that also added a decision. And the third thing that we were very concerned about, I don't know if you ever had to teach at Center. West Boulevard doesn't have air conditioning, so I know it can get warm there. Warm. But I can tell you, for Center especially on the third floor, putting our staff and students in a mask all day, especially if we were planning to start August 31st, in which you could still have mid-80s, maybe even 90-degree temperatures, and it's still relatively warm at night. You can't get that warm air out, turn the air over, and get the cold air in. We're really worried about that. So all three of those blended together and said to us that was a no-brainer. And the 2 weeks was a sweet spot, and that's why we moved forward with that.
Okay. So can you talk to us about, and I've heard this before, but I don't know exactly what it is. What is a COVID dashboard?
Well, you mean for individual school districts?
Yes.
Well, that was a later order from the governor, saying that he wanted to make sure we're communicating and being transparent. And actually, all along, not to pat Boardman back, we were planning on doing exactly what he said, because I thought that was important.
Sure.
And trust really is, to me, the glue or the concrete that binds all our plans together. Trust between parents and trust between staff. So, in order to report and be transparent about what was going on with COVID in the building, we felt we needed to make sure we were transparent and communicate out to our parents. Okay. So the dashboard basically just says it's about confirmed cases of COVID in your building, either staff or students. Okay. And that's updated weekly. As of this time, we have no confirmed cases. We do have some people quarantined. Some students have been quarantined because they've been deemed a close contact. Sure. And recently we had 2 staff members had to be quarantined.
Okay.
And then they most often they'll go and get tested, and they both tested negative. So
Okay.
it stops at the quarantine.
Okay.
That we don't have to report out, but we just felt like early on with our first case of a staff quarantine, it was important to report.
Right.
Because if parents and students don't see that a staff member's there, we don't want them to automatically think it's a COVID case.
Sure.
So we were doing our best to be open, be transparent, to make sure people are making decisions on facts.
Okay. And I think parents appreciate that, and staff members as well. Could you give us a percentage approximately, like online versus in school?
Yeah, actually, we're right around 32% chose the remote option.
Okay.
So if my math still works, 68%.
All right.
And that can vary building to building. I'm just talking district-wise. We were projecting about 20-25, but as we watched other schools open up, we saw that across our area, that number went higher than everyone predicted. So,
Okay.
So right around 32%.
Okay. All right. And for the kids that are going in person this year, how is their day different from a typical year with drop off, pickup, buses, schedules, things like that?
Well, a little plug. So you're a former West Boulevard teacher. So nice thing is, if you've been at West Boulevard a year ago, in that front lot,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have
Gets
buses.
crazy.
Yeah, you have parent drop off, you have teacher parking, and it's a small lot. And that's been a thorn for years. The joke I make is, and West Boulevard has phenomenal PTA. I used to go to the PTA, and they're very upset about that. And I talked to them in early spring before COVID, saying we were going to get this done. And then when COVID hit, I was worried we wouldn't have the funds to do it. And I explained to the board, I said, look, this one's a safety issue. 2, I gave them my word, and we need to honor it. And so I'm so glad we were able to get that done. So it ties into your question. We were able to put a new entrance off of the side street there, and we were able to put a new faculty lot off the side and back.
Sure.
And that has cleaned things up. And I think West Boulevard, and the reason why I give so much attention, is really a shining example of how things really look different.
Yeah.
So 1, it's because of facility improvement. 2, because of a logistical improvement. Because of how we don't want kids coming through one point of entry.
Sure.
So on the back there, we can have different grades come in, parents can drop off, buses in the front, faculty parking off to the side. It is smooth.
Okay.
It's so pleasant to see. And we're doing the same thing at the other buildings. We're using as many entrances as possible for kids to come in, so we don't have that one main entry point. And that has really helped. At the end of the day, they stagger more, so kids are getting out of different doors at different times, so we don't have that mass congregation.
Okay. All right, very good. Has that changed schedules? At West Boulevard, I know the kids used to come in at about 7:50, 8 o'clock till about roughly 2:15.
Well, the elementary kids are coming a little bit earlier. That is not due to COVID. That is due to we realigned our busing. Again, this was a decision we had made before COVID.
Okay.
We wanted to go to a 7 to 12 busing schedule. We were running, it was like a 4-tier. It was like they call it modified 3. And our ridership at the high school is really low. There are so many kids that drive or have after-school activities.
Sure.
And we just taking a look and being fiscally responsible, we felt it was important to put 7 through 12 busing. So we had to move Glenwood up to an earlier start time. They had one of the latest start and ending times. And that was another concern. A lot of those kids in 7th, 8th grade are very active in activities after school, and they're not getting out till 3:30, 3:45. So to solve 2 problems, we moved them up, combined the 7 through 12 bus. But we need to have some buffer time with the elementary run, so we had to start them a little bit earlier.
Okay. All right. Very good.
But to add to that, there is the one thing that changed things. In order for our teachers to run an in-person and a remote, and to be able to devote attention to both learning groups, so we didn't want them to favor one or the other. It's a balancing act. We had to find time in the school day, and so at the elementary level, they actually get out an hour earlier.
Okay.
So we release the kids an hour earlier, and that gives teachers time to dedicate to remote learners. And then in the intermediate, the junior high, and the high school, they come to school an hour late. There's an hour delay, and that allows the same thing, but on the front end. So that has changed our bus schedule a little bit, but when we go to a post-COVID school world, we'll be back to, but we'll still keep the 7 through 12 bus routing. Okay.
All right. That's great. And, I think, last year being, in the midst of all that, I think one of the biggest the biggest questions I had specifically from parents was, are we able to get some one-on-one instruction, via Zoom or whatever it might be? And we tried to do our best with that, but it wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do.
It is challenging. Like I said, you talk to any of our teachers, they're doing a phenomenal job. They really are. We're running 2 systems of education. Running one stuff, running just in person is demanding as a teacher, as you know.
Yeah.
Running remote is demanding, as you know, because we did in the spring. We're doing both and asking our teachers. And it was a tough decision because you can take your remote learners and, for lack of a better term, farm them out or put them into an academy and outsource that. That is an option you can do, and then let your own teachers just do the in-person. But we made a decision in the district that's not right. We've always said we're a Spartan community. We're not going to have 2 separate systems. In order for the remote learners to have a true experience, to have an authentic experience, to have a challenging experience, and have a true Boardman education, it has to be our staff members because they're phenomenal. So how do we do that? So it's been tough. It's been tough. We tried to allocate that time, and we're only entering middle of our 2nd week. And like any new experience, balance gets achieved over time.
Okay. So I guess for a lack of a better term, a socially distant classroom, how does that look now compared to the beginning of last school year? I know you had mentioned the plexiglass.
Yes.
So can you give us some other examples?
Yeah, well, a lot of plexiglass. Desks, you figure about 30% of your students are remote learners. So you can spread the kids out. So you're in person about 68 to 70%. So you can spread them out.
Sure.
Doesn't necessarily mean we've removed every single desk and put that somewhere because storage becomes an issue, but they're spread throughout the classroom. We got desks spread as far as possible. Then the plexiglass helps. It's very hard when you have 70% to get 6 feet everywhere. We can at least get 3. We like to get 6, but the plexiglass truly helps. So that's the thing you notice when you go in. But the nice thing is the plexiglass really isn't, in my opinion, as distracting as I thought it would be. Because you think of plexiglass, and then if you had a colored or a metal frame on all of them, it would look like all these boxes, these glass boxes. But they're pretty much the hinges on them are translucent.
Okay.
So it doesn't impede anyone's vision. You can see it, but it's not that distracting.
Okay.
And we have some situations where we do have teachers that have higher health needs, and we've actually built them like a plexiglass, for lack of a term, secluded area for them to teach from, so they can come into work every day and teach. So we do have a handful of those. Those do look different. You'll notice those right away, but most teachers have some type of divider just on their desktop.
Within the classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's really cool. So since the school year has started, we're about 2 weeks in, what concern, are you hearing any concerns from either teachers or students or parents?
Sure. Whenever you try anything new, there are growing pains. I mean, if you try something absolutely new and there are no negatives, that means it is the most rare thing in the world, or you're being naive.
Yeah, no doubt.
We're not listening. So again, it's that balance. I've heard where, and it can be different for each building. It's not like a district-wide concern where one building is maybe focusing too much on the in-person, and maybe the remote learner doesn't feel like they're getting as much attention. I've heard the opposite too. I've heard where we're too much focus on the remote person and not enough on the in-person. I think that is natural. Now, it doesn't mean you ignore it, not at all, but you listen. And you look for some commonality, and then you figure out a way to solve that and balance that. But balance will come. Yeah. But you got to give it time. Like I said, we asked teachers to do something they've never done before. They've done the in-person, they've done some remote, but they've never had a school day which they had to do both. Yeah. So you got to give them time. We have phenomenal teachers. They will figure this out. Yeah. But we all have to be patient. We have to be flexible.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now, just a couple other questions. I know Ohio, at least, I'm not sure if there's new news, but with the lack of businesses being open back in the spring, they had announced a big budget cut to a lot of the school districts, and I believe Boardman was close to $1 million. Yeah,
we actually 883,000. Not that I know that number off the top of my head, but I do. Yeah. And the thing that kind of got skipped over a little bit. At least I feel like it did, because we're so focused on closing school to go to remote, and it was towards the end of the school year, and the topics were remote instruction and when's prom and what are we doing with spring sports, that it was actually in the last 3 fiscal months of our fiscal year, they pulled out $883,000 in 3 months. So, and it said, sorry, we have to do this. And I get it. You know, they're decisions that are bigger than Boardman for the state of Ohio. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that was money that was already forecasted in our budget. So that was taken out, and then they carried over that budget to the next year. So we lost another $883,000. That's tough. I mean, math-wise, that's $1.7 million that we were counting on. So we're already frustrated with the current funding formula,
sure,
because that could be a whole show on on how Boardman's a cap district. But to do that, now we did get some federal CARES and ESSER funds. Those are one-time funds, and those did help offset. I mean, obviously to open up. We talk about plexiglass. We talk about hand sanitizers. You talk about masks, gloves, all that. We wanted to make sure our staff was properly equipped and felt safe coming back. So, I mean, and our students were safe for the in-person instruction. So, yeah, we did have to spend money on that. So some of the federal dollars did help offset that.
Okay, all right. And one thing, you know, that I can say I was even a part of in the spring that I was very proud of that you guys did and started was having, you know, we know for a lot of kids, school is their safe place. And a lot of times what people don't realize, especially people of means, a lot of kids, that's where they eat, you know, they get lunches and things like that. So talk to us about what you did with the school lunches.
You're talking in the spring?
In the spring.
Yeah, that was honestly, that just every Monday, boy, what a great day Monday was. And so we had to make sure that that families in need were fed. So every Monday, and I know you were part of it, we'd have anywhere from 20, 30, 40 volunteers show up in our cafeteria in the morning. We would have assembly lines pretty much for packing 5 servings of breakfast in a bag, and then 5 servings of lunch in a bag, and then we'd box all those up, and that'd take us about, once we got the system perfected, it'd take us about 2 hours, and then we'd have about 2 hours of food distribution. We'd haul all that outside the doors there, outside the high school cafeteria, and we'd have additional volunteers pass out the milk, the lunches. We got a lot of donations of fresh fruit, which was and vegetables, which was great. And so we passed out those, and that we did that all the way through the end of June. Technically, we were allowed to stop once school was over, but we felt it was the right thing to do to go all the way through the end of June for these families.
It's so great. It's so great, especially in
and we
times
still do
of
it now,
needs.
smaller scale. We do it for the remote learners.
Okay.
Yeah, so you know, we do have 30%. The only difference is we do it during the school day, and we just ask so we can balance the amount of food we're buying, because we have to serve food in person also. So again, we have 2 systems going.
Right.
We just ask for parents, they have a chance, it's free. And actually the federal government says it's free for everybody. That's something that maybe, again, I don't think everyone realizes that the federal government said through the end of this year that there's no one's on free and reduced, everyone's on free and reduced.
Okay.
So, but we do that every Monday. We just ask parents to order ahead of time.
Okay.
There's no cost.
All right. Well, I mean, I just think that's such a great thing that, you know, we always know Boardman for academics, athletics, the arts, but I just think extending a helping hand in a time of need is just something that you guys should be applauded for.
I appreciate that.
So let's move on to sports. So middle school and high school sports. I was telling you before the show last night, I heard that Champion and Brookfield are the first area cancellation. I can't remember which school. I believe it was Champion that had a COVID or 2 cases. So that forced that game to be canceled. Could you tell us how, you know, that has changed within Boardman at the athletic side? Sure.
That was actually one of my fears is when we're trying to figure out back in end of July, mid-July, whether or not they were going to allow sports.
Sure.
To me, that was a concern. But they've put protocols in place. I mean, we experienced something like that early on. You know, we had a student, and then we learned quickly how to do contact tracing. And I got to give credit to our football coach. He quickly learned to adjust how to do practice. Practices are different because you almost have to do them in pods. So if that were to hit, because of contact tracing, maybe you only lose 6 or 7 players, not 12, 10, because they may not have it, but they're quarantined now. Okay. I'm sure that's possibly what would happen in that situation. Maybe if only 1 or 2 students have it. but still the quarantine can impact you. So that has changed some things, but it's like I said, coaches they've adapted, and it's working, and it's, I tell you, that was, and Justin, you'll get this because you're a basketball coach. You got to understand, we shut that building down in the middle of March, went to remote. And I think in the back of some people's minds, whether students or parents or even staff members, it was like, because we kicked everybody out. We didn't do that. It was just the function of remote learning, that maybe like the building itself was sick, but it wasn't. It wasn't. We just did it. So the building was quiet. And I remember I walked in there, and I want to say it was late July. I walked to my office and I heard this sound, and I'm like, what is that? And it was basketballs. And I was like, I'm getting goosebumps right now. It was basketballs bouncing again in the gym and home practice. What a good feeling. What a good sound it was that you're starting to approach a few things of normalcy. And just I poked my head in just to see coaches coaching and kids participating. It felt good, felt right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm just going to use high school football as the example. The attendance at the games, obviously, it was a big order with Mike DeWine.
Sure.
So I believe, is it 10 or 15%?
15%. Yeah.
Okay. So how are those tickets spread out? Do they go to the parents?
So it's the original order said 15%, which puts our capacity right around 1,100. I think it's like 1,070 and change. Okay. And so, yeah, we had some tough decisions to make, but the order also said it's supposed to be for family and loved ones. And so we I don't know who a player's family and loved ones are. Right. So what we did is 4 tickets for every senior, and then 2 for the underclassmen, and then we have a % that we give to the visitors. So I mean, that pretty much allocates all of our tickets, and we'll let them decide who's in the category of loved one and family. But that includes our football players, our cheerleaders, our band, and we also have a TV crew that are students.
Sure.
So the same thing with them. So that pretty much allocates all of our tickets. Okay. But you talk about it. I remember going to that first game, and the word, maybe it's appropriate because we're approaching October, was spooky. Yeah. It was just weird because it was so quiet. It was just different, and it wasn't even like a scrimmage. It was just different because of. I'm not saying it was good or bad. It was just different, and you're like, what? Why is this like this? But you realize you missed that student cheering section. That's always neat. I mean, that's high school sports, right? That student cheering section.
And for those kids that don't play football, that's something they remember. Whatever. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, but they are able to live stream a lot of the games,
right?
This year, which was a new order, which is great. So. Let me switch now to focus more on some sports questions for you.
Okay.
So I'm going to just call this first, second, third, and fourth down here. So first down.
All right.
For Coach Saxton, who are some people in your life that you looked up to or mentored you, whether it be a family member, a coach, a teacher, to get you where you are as a leader today?
Obviously, number one on my list would be my dad. Look at my profession. Football coach, superintendent, math teacher, phenomenal father, phenomenal husband. I watch him now as he takes care of my mom. Just his dedication, his devotion, his love. I mean, for a man to see that, a married man to see that, to me is just that's tops. But I've had some great educational mentors in my life. My first teaching job, a head football coach, Jim Hadakovic, just taught me how to treat people. I remember early on, I was in my first coaching meeting, and here's all these guys yelling, and I'm like, what is going on? I was 22 years old. I'm like, what? I thought the adults, are supposed to get along. And he just said, look, we talk about things. You got to be honest. And he said, and we shut the door. And we don't criticize, we don't attack each other, we attack the problem. He said, but the rule is when that door opens, everyone's got to be on the same page. There are no parking lot discussions. And we don't open the door until we're at that point. And I've always learned that because that applies to things way beyond a football coaching office. We talk about that in leadership team meetings. We talked about that when we formed a teacher COVID team. I said, there's 15, 16 of us in here. If we do this right, there'll be no parking lot conversations. You need to be honest. We need to have honest conversations. What don't you like? What are you fearful of? What aren't we doing right? If we do this right, then that'll be true and honest communication. But if we're having conversations outside of here, then we're not having a true honest conversation. So Jim Hadakovic, my college football coach, Chris Smith, he was my position coach and my head coach. Just a phenomenal man. I remember just a piece of advice he gave me was a very close friend of mine I played football with had passed away right after graduation. That's tough. When you see someone 23 who's in perfect health, that's hard for any of us to process. And I remember riding in the car with him to the gravesite, saying, he goes, you got your first job. What do you want to do next? And I said, wouldn't mind one day being like a defense coordinator or head of the math department. He said, good, you have goals. You got to have goals. He said, now, if you want to be those people, start acting like you're already that person before you get the job, and they'll see you as that person before you get the job. And if you do it right, it should be a no-brainer when that position opens up. And I've always remembered that. What a great piece of advice. So there's a couple there for you. I can go on.
No, that's great. That's awesome. I love that. Second down, growing up or currently, favorite athletes?
Oh, boy. Man, that's a tough question. Favorite athletes? I guess is that bad? I can't or
maybe possibly. Well, I guess that goes back to the first question of role models, but I was always a defensive back. So, I mean, whoever was playing for the Buckeyes at the time, I love to watch. But, it's just going to be a strange answer. And some people are going to, because this person's not a defensive back. But someone, who I really admire is JT Barrett. Okay.
He
great leader.
A lot of criticism. But if you followed his story, when he was a freshman, I mean, he wanted to be in every meeting. I almost had to kick him out of meetings. He was following what that advice that Coach Chris Smith gave me. He wanted to be the starting quarterback. He wanted to be a leader on the team. He wanted to be a captain. He was acting like one as a freshman. And a lot of us, we walk into a big-time sports program as a freshman, we probably would not have the courage or the maturity or the wisdom to do it. He was doing that. I don't even know how many records he holds. He might not be the flashiest guy in the world, but boy, was he a winner. He found ways to get it done. I've always admired that out of him.
Love it. Great example. Third down, favorite sports movie or movies?
Oh boy. You know what? It's you're going to laugh because this is like, you could ask, like, what are some things that people don't know about you that they'd be surprised? I have a lot of geek in me. I'm like, I love technology. Yeah. Honestly, my kids, they'll tell you like the Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Love those movies. Just the classic good versus evil.
Yeah.
The underdog overcoming. There's so many great roles in there and lead characters that have so many great traits. I could sit there and watch those all the time, and I think I've turned my girls into fans too. They can watch them. So. I know that's probably a weird answer, but
no, that's great.
That is the truth.
That's great. I love it. And last question. Obviously, you're an Ohio State fan. You used the JT Barrett example earlier. With Ohio State now back, I believe October 24th is the kickoff. What's your prediction for the Buckeyes this season?
My first prediction is I'm not going to need counseling, because I thought I might. Because a long time ago, I told my wife, I said, look, being a football coach and being a football fan, I said, look, all I want to do is watch the Buckeyes on Saturday. That's it. I'm not going to watch the NFL on Sunday. Obviously, I'm going to cover games or go to games on Friday, but I just want to watch the Buckeyes. That's it. Mm-hmm. Sunday, it is church day, leaves day, whatever. But give me the Buckeyes. So when we didn't have them, that was going to be tough this year. She knew it. So to hear that they're coming back on the 24th, they're going to run the table. My prediction is, I like the fact that Wyatt Davis and Sean Wade came back. You want to talk about someone who's built a program. They only come back if there's a program. Mm-hmm. You see some of these athletes aren't doing that. Why? Because they haven't built. You always hear them talking about the brotherhood.
Yes. That's
not just words. You can tell that exists. You can tell they're playing for something greater. I tell you what, you want to get sick to your stomach, go back and watch that Clemson game. You're like, what? How do they lose that?
I know.
Like, this is the craziest thing. So I think that still is in their gut, and they're going away. They're going to run the table.
I love it. Yeah, they seem highly, highly motivated, and Coach Day is really, not missed a beat taking over.
I would love to see him practice after they announced that the season was back.
Oh, yeah.
There would have been some hitting going on.
Well, and I was saying for a while, the games are sort of the reward for all the practice time you put in, and for them to put in all that work and not get any sort of reward of playing on the field, but it's finally, hopefully, fingers crossed, everybody stays healthy and
right.
And
yeah,
we get
that's a big piece of it. I look back to like Justin Fields when you read more about him, saying that there was no decision in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
He was staying. He has his goals. He has a laser focus, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making that prediction, because he can carry that team on his shoulders.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, Mr. Saxton, I know I've taken up a lot of your time already today, but I really, really greatly appreciate you coming in.
No.
I know you wanted to mention something before you go about the levy coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, two things. I know it happened while we're on here. So at 1:00 today, they announced the Blue Ribbon awardees. That's a national recognition for schools that are doing it as some of the best manner. And West Boulevard, your former school, and actually compliments to you and Al Cervello and all the teachers there, because it's not from this year's data. Obviously, it's from data from 1819 when you were a teacher there. So kudos to the teachers, the Al Cervello support staff. They all work together. That's their second. Schools fight to get one. Now they have two, which puts them in a very elite category. So congratulations to West Boulevard. And we talked about finances before, and finances are so key. In May of 2018, we made a pledge to the Boardman community that we had a new money issue up. They passed it. We made a pledge that it would last 10 years. And we stood in front of thousands of people instead of looking in the eye. And we tend to honor that pledge. But renewals are part of that.
Sure.
We need, it's together. We're working together as a Spartan community. We need the community to support our renewals. Those are not new money. Those, like I said, are just renewals. Well, the one levy was first passed in 91, and it's been renewed since. And the other one was passed in 96. So they've been around for close to 20 years in the one case. And that's we count on that because who knows what's coming in the future. Just like we had 1.7 pulled out, we need those continuous renewals to support what we're doing.
Okay. All right. Well, again, Mr. Saxton, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for wearing the maroon and white.
Absolutely,
I love it.
Yeah.
Like the Spartan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And make sure you say hello.
You look
to
faster, tougher, better looking when you put that maroon on. Are you 6'5"?
Well, again, we appreciate it. Go Spartans.
Yeah.
Say hello to your girls for me.
We'll do. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, so right now I'm going to shift as Mr. Saxton has to head out, but I'd like to throw up a sports segment on here. Yesterday we had a loss in the football community. Gail Sayers, a great running back, passed away. So here's a little tribute video to him. Thank you so much.
Am I good?
Oh yeah,
right.
you're on.
And that's what I did.
Gail Sayers, without a doubt, the finest halfback that ever played, together with George McAfee and Red Grange.
Give me 18 inches of daylight. That's all I need.
This is Gail Sayers. You can see the balance in the move here as Sayers dives into the end zone for a touchdown. That's Gail Sayers on the 15-yard line. You can see him breaking away from that tackler. And watch the moves here. The quick move of Gail Sayers. He's off 85 yards for a touchdown, looking over his shoulder. His sixth touchdown of the game. He has just broken the National Football League touchdown record for 1 year.
That move of his, and he was gone. You never got a good shot at him. Christ, that ought to be a cakewalk against anybody else. And something, it turned out to be the truth.
As Bear fans everywhere know, when we watched Gail Sayers run, we were watching a master magician at work. Gail, thank you for 7 glorious seasons and fabulous memories. Tonight, on behalf of Bear fans everywhere, it is my privilege to retire Bear jersey number 40 forever.
It was a great honor to play in the National Football League. But I consider myself very, very lucky to play here in Chicago for you, the great Chicago Bear football fan.
Hopefully, people that admired me, that they would see I played as hard as I could.
Bummed out about the Indians. I feel like it's been an absolute roller coaster ride, but the last two nights have been great. The Indians have walked off the last two nights with wins. Last night was a ninth inning home run to beat the White Sox 3-2. But let's go back to Tuesday night, and we're going to take a listen on how they clinched a playoff berth.
In the 10th, 3-2 Sox. Here's the 2-2 pitch from Ruiz to Ramirez. A swing and a drive to deep right center field. Away, back and gone. It's a game winner. It's a playoff clincher. And for the fourth time in the last 5 years, Indians fans, you will have a postseason to remember. A walk-off 3-run homer to right center by Jose Ramirez. The Indians, with 4 in the 10th, have stunned the Chicago White Sox 5-3. The magic number is 0.
So that home run brought us back to the Indians clinching a playoff berth, as you heard. A really interesting stat I just recently read about Jose Ramirez. He has what's called the highest WAR, WAR, which is wins above replacement. So in all of baseball, in fact. So his WAR is higher than, the guys he's going against. So that made me think, is Jose Ramirez a possible MVP candidate? Before this week, I probably would have said no. But, as we finish off the season, the regular season this week, and the Indians clinching a berth and probably going to end up being in that, 7-8 spot, shows really how important he is. We hear a lot about Francisco Lindor, and yes, he's a great player. But, at times I wonder, though, is he even the best player on his side of the infield? So Jose Ramirez just absolutely carrying the Indians right now. His competition is probably Jose Abreu, Tim Anderson of the White Sox, and Nelson Cruz of the Twins. So all AL Central guys, which is really interesting. Possibly his teammate, Shane Bieber. And getting back to last night, Shane Bieber, pitched his final game of the regular season, and he has... there's no doubt in my mind he is 100% the American League MVP, or I'm sorry, Cy Young Award winner. There's no doubt about that. He has a chance to do something really, really special, and he's the leader in all 3 of these categories right now. But he has the chance to become basically what's called the triple crown of pitching in the American League, and possibly even all of baseball. But he leads the American League in wins with 8. He has a 1.63 earned run average, and he has struck out 122 batters, which in a 60-game season, those are remarkable numbers. That has not happened in Cleveland since 1940, and you've probably heard the name Bob Feller. He was the last person to do it. It does look like his former teammate Trevor Bauer is the head. He's currently only 4-4 record-wise, but he has pitched very, very well this season. But he looks to be the Cy Young favorite in the National League with the Reds. So the Indians finish off the season. this coming weekend, and by our next show, it's going to be the playoffs. So right now, just looking real quick at the playoff seeds, Tampa, it's 1 through 8 this year. So Tampa, Oakland, Minnesota are leading their divisions. And then 4, 5, and 6, we got the White Sox, the Yankees, and the Houston. And then in 7 and 8, we have the Indians and the Blue Jays rounding out the final seed. So we'll see how that holds. We'll look into playoff matchups, but the Indians should have a great chance. I know their hitting has been suspect and hit and miss this year, no pun intended, but with a great pitching staff in a short series, you always have a good chance. So we'll won't hold our breath, but we'll keep our fingers crossed for a nice matchup in the first round. Switching real quick, I just want to have a few notes on the NBA before we close out here today's show. Just a few minutes left, but last night, and my guest on Tuesday, my mom, Jenny Kennedy, I asked her for a score prediction, and she said, I believe 94-91, the Heat were going to win. And, she was a little bit off on the score, but she nailed it by a 3-point difference. The Heat actually won 112-109 last night to take a 3-1 series advantage. So Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley have that team really, really cranking on all cylinders right now. And they're really only playing 7 guys. Last night, Tyler Hero was the hero of the game. He had 37 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 5 of 10 shooting from the 3-point line. He is only 20 years old. So just unbelievable numbers. And of the 37 points, 17 were in the fourth quarter to sort of take control of that game. Jimmy Butler, Gordon Dragic, Bam Adebayo, just continuing to do well. But I feel like with Miami, it's a different person every night that's leading the charge. The Celtics, they're continued by basically their main 4 guys: Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Kemba Walker. But you got Gordon Hayward coming off the bench, and this was really, really interesting. It created a lot of internet debate. Gordon Hayward's wife was 9 months pregnant. He just came back, and I'm not going to get involved of should he have left the bubble, should he have stayed, but his wife did have the baby out, obviously outside the bubble, and he stayed, but he did a lot of Zoom calls and things like that. But I know he had a name suggested for the baby and his wife had a name. So I'm going to say she probably deserves to pick the name with him not being there present and her doing all the hard work there. Switching to the Lakers and the Nuggets. The Lakers have a 2-1 series lead on the Nuggets. 2 things I'm looking for tonight in tonight's game. First of all, the Nuggets are a much younger team. Younger teams seem to have been doing well in the bubble. I don't know necessarily why that is. Maybe, you play your game, you get to go back to your hotel room, you're playing video games, you're doing whatever. They don't have the stresses that some of these older guys do, of a family and kids and things like that. But, the Lakers looked tired the other night, and the Nuggets took advantage of that. So I'm interested to see every series the Nuggets have played in. They've been down 3-1. So the Lakers are up 2-1. We'll see what happens tonight. But going forward, the Nuggets are the younger team. Did the Lakers have enough to get to the finish line? And the second thing I'm looking for are the Lakers that have the dynamic duo. They have LeBron and they have Anthony Davis, the 2 best players probably left in all of basketball, and they have them in the starting lineup. A few other stats I was looking at. There's something, and I'm going to give credit to Bill Simmons on this one. He has something called the 42-point club. So if you take points, rebounds, and assists, and you add those together, if you average 42 or more, you're basically in the elite of the elite. So right now, LeBron is averaging 26, 10, and 9. You add those numbers up, you get 45. Anthony Davis is averaging 29, 10, and 4, which averages to 43. So this has only happened not even a handful of times in the NBA where I believe Shaq and Kobe did it. I want to say Kareem and Magic might have done it back in the 80s, but really this is unprecedented territory. So we'll see LeBron and Anthony Davis. To me, LeBron at age 35, year 17, he sees that finish line. And for him, if he could get that 4th title and 3rd title with a 3rd different franchise, will just put him, in that. You always hear the debate between LeBron and Jordan, or LeBron and Kobe, or whoever it might be. But this, to me, supplants LeBron as if not the top player, right there with any other player you can name. And just a final note is we have the NFL kicks off this weekend tonight with Miami and Jacksonville playing. So we will see how that goes. Remember to set your fantasy lineup. And with that, I'm going to sign off for the day. But I'd like to thank our special guest, Superintendent of Boardman Schools, Tim Saxton. And thanks to our sponsor, Coca's Pizza. I like to end with a quote, and with today's educational leader in today, I thought this was a good quote from Benjamin Franklin, one of our founding fathers. He said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." So with that said, everyone have a great weekend. Take care of yourself, and we will see you next week. Have a great day.